All right, so I'll just hit record and then we can edit the beginning or whatnot. But well, it's good to be back. This is our 50th episode, and for the 50th episode, we have a special guest, Travis. How would is it Rosbach?
Rosbach, yeah.
Is that like, does he have a Germanic origin or?
It is, yeah. It's German. There happens to be a little town in Bavaria that's called Rosbach or Rosbach, Germany, and I got the privilege of going there a few years back, and it just so happens to be where all the water comes from, like bubble water, carbonated water comes from. So evidently, I've got water like in my history, my DNA.
I used to live in Salzburg, which is close to Bavaria, and they're mostly like the salt city, but it's just beautiful. That area, the Alps, I don't think there's anything more beautiful like in the spring. It's when it becomes green. So
did you ever go to the Red Bull?
Yeah. The hangar, the big hangar.
Yeah, the hangar. Yeah.
It's called, what's it called? It's called, actually, I have
hangar
6.
Something. Hangar 6.
Let me check it. Actually, I have Google in front of me, so that's good. Hangar 7.
Hangar 7, you're close. Yeah, wasn't that a trip?
Yeah, that's so crazy. And one of the things is like, I'm actually originally from Montenegro, which used to be a part of Yugoslavia back in the day, and the founder of Red Bull, he is Austrian, but his family is from Croatia. So when I went there, and Hangar 7, for the people who are listening, is basically like a huge hangar where he has his stuff, kind of
toys.
Yeah, he just has his toys, and he actually had the dictator or whatever, the president of Yugoslavia back in the day was called Tito, and he had his airplane. And I was like, wow, that's cool. He was like, his presidential airplane in his hangar. And I was like, interesting move.
It was a lot of fun to check that out. Go see all the race cars and helicopters and jets and just fun stuff.
Yeah, I was there when the guy jumped from I don't know how far, when he broke the barrier. I was there, and I think the guy was from Salzburg. Forgot what his name was, but everybody, the whole city was like buzzing.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, slightly controversial. He used a GoPro that had a lens distortion, so it made it look like the Earth was round. And I guess that's a wholly different topic. But yeah, that was a big day.
Right. Yeah. So let's maybe give people a little bit of a background. We started talking, which is cool. But could you maybe introduce yourself a little bit for anybody who's listening, and then we can dig deep into all kinds of topics.
Yeah. Why are you here, Travis? My name is Travis Rosbach, and I'm a boat captain and a dive instructor, dive master. I was a commercial airline pilot, serial entrepreneur, and a lot of people kind of know me for Hydro Flask, which is a double wall vacuum insulated stainless steel water bottle. Invented that, founded that company, had a fairly successful exit from there. Went on to found the Tumalo group, which we now help all stages of business go to the next stage of business, wherever they are to wherever they're headed. We do that with sourcing, advising, all kinds, pretty much anything that people need to get businesses going.
Makes sense. And this is actually not the first time where I had a founder of a company coming. You used to be a pilot, right?
I was an airline transport pilot. Yep.
Right. This is not. I wonder what is it? Maybe engineering. I really wonder, because you're not the first pilot who I interviewed who was also a successful founder. And I wonder, like, is it just like pilots and engineers? Is there some correlation between successful companies and pilots? What is it?
That's a good question. I don't know what the correlation is. I can assure you I am pretty much the opposite spectrum of an engineer. Maybe 178 degrees opposite. Maybe perhaps it's because once you're up in the air and you face that life, that you never know what's going to happen next. And you don't know, you're not 100% safe up there. You're not 100% safe anywhere, let's face it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little risky. And I guess the people who are willing to risk being up in the air with other people's lives in their hands, by the time we get down to the earth and we start a business, it just seems a little bit more mundane, I guess, a little less risky to be on the earth, terra firma, and doing business stuff.
Right.
That would be, I'm sure that would be a great book.
Right. Yeah. I wonder. And so did you directly go from high school to like pilot school, or what was kind of the transition there? And
no, I took off. My dad was in St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so I left high school. I was in South Salem High School, class in 1997, and graduated. About 4 days later, I took off and I was down in St. Croix and was a dive master. I became a dive master at 18, and then went over to St. Thomas and became a dive instructor. And I was just kind of diving throughout the entire Caribbean and realized I wanted to be on top of the water in the boats. And so I got my, I got a 25-ton U.S. Merchant Marine captain's license, spent quite a bit of time on parasail boats and charter boats. And then I got on a yacht, and then I got my 50-ton captain's license. And I did that for quite a while, and then became a pilot and flew for the Seaborne Airlines, flying seaplanes, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and Puerto Rico. Did that for a while, and then moved up to Florida and became a jet charter pilot, flying predominantly Lears, Hawkers, Falcons, planes like that. And then, but my passion was always entrepreneurship. I always wanted to do business. I inherited a pretty good bookshelf when I was about 12, and I wanted to do business. And so moved back home to Oregon, and I had a girlfriend at the time who was with me, and we started a fence company. And that was kind of our first real business, and my first time anyway into getting into business.
Right. That's interesting. And did you live in Hawaii at some point, or did you live in Hawaii after Oregon, or how did that work?
I did. Yeah. So we did the fence company, and then sold it and moved out to Maui, and then ended up in Oahu, and lived in Oahu for about 4 years, and started a sign and screen printing banners. It was kind of an agency, kind of doing all sorts of PR and marketing and copy and embroidery and pretty much anything to help sustain a business. And did that. And then the economy kind of collapsed about 08, 07, 08, it kind of started to collapse. And that's when Hydro Flask kind of hit me. And I invented, and then we founded I founded, and she co-founded Hydro Flask.
Right. So with regards to, like, at least for me, like from the outside looking at your kind of your background, it seems like you're always driven to the outdoors, at least from what you've done. And it's impressive that you became ship captain, dive instructor, went to aviation, and then as well, how hard is it to actually go from like a regular plane to a jet powered engine? I assume that's probably not easy to go step up and become that type of pilot, right?
Yeah, no, there's a fair bit more training involved. And but it's micro specific. So I went to, like, when I joined the airlines, I went up to Canada to go fly that particular plane. And then when I moved to Florida and I was flying I flew a lot of Lear 35s. So I went to, I went to Orlando for, it's called flight safety, and you get these big sims, they're as big as the studio. They're just huge. And it's like, it's a full motion video game. And I was never really like that big into video games, but it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. But that's how I learned how to fly the Learjet. Yeah. And it was, I think, I don't know, it was like 2 weeks or a month or so of like pretty intense training.
Yeah. The closest I've experienced to that, actually, I was at Disney World in Orlando, like a couple of days ago. And we went to the NASA space simulator where it gives you like the full gravity experience, and you're kind of going to space. And I was like, this is cool. This simulator is pretty cool. So I assume it's something probably a little bit more expensive and a little bit more, a little bit better than what they have in Disney, but it was really cool. So
Oh,
I guess,
that's awesome.
yeah. And one question I had is like, with regards to like, how did the idea for Hydro Flask come about? And I think for anybody who's listening, that's basically, it's a stain. I don't know personally how to explain it besides what the way I look at, Hydro Flask and products similar to that is, kind of a stainless steel bottle or a cup that can, insulate for temperatures, right? And I know that this, at least in my recollection, didn't exist prior to that, if not correct. And then with the Hydro Flask, you brought on the whole wave of these products that now exist, and Hydro Flask is probably like one of the best, or the best in line.
Yeah. You nailed it. That was spot on. I was thirsty, and we were living in Oahu, and I had this sign company. And one day I was out running some errands, and when I was in flight training, I worked at a rock climbing store. And so I knew Nalgene water bottles, these plastic water bottles. And I knew I didn't want to buy a single use water bottle. We had so much garbage and so much plastic specifically washing up on the beaches. And so I went in to go get a bottle, and the whole shelf was empty. It was just this wall of where the water bottles used to be. And I said, like, what happened? Where are all the water bottles?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy says, well, we don't know what it is, but it's called BPA, and we're not real sure. We're just finding out more. And as a preliminary, precautionary measure, the owner decided to just pull all of the bottles off the shelf. I was like, well, who's going to fill up the shelf? And he says, well, nobody. There are no other brands. And it was the damnedest thing. It just kind of came in the back of my head, and it came out my mouth. And I said, I will do that. Mm-hmm. And then from the time I said that, he laughed at me. And from the time I said it to the time he laughed at me, I saw like about 10 years down the road of myself up on stage talking about the highly successful water bottle company. Mm-hmm. It was just like, okay, yep, I'm gonna do that now. And so I went and started Hydro Flask.
Right. So what was the issue with the BP thing you mentioned? What was the issue with the bottles? Was there some kind of bacteria or something that didn't work?
Yeah, well,
plastic?
What it turned out to be was the owner of the sporting goods store happened to be French, and she had been in Europe and found that there was this article that mentioned this BPA. It's mm-hmm. I don't know how to. I always kind of butcher the word. I don't really know how to, it's some big chemical word, right?
Right.
And but it's basically a female growth hormone, and they found it in plastic, and it would leach out of the plastics, especially when they were hot. And so the owner, she's like, well, no, we don't want any plastic water bottles on our shelves because we don't want to, do this, even though it hadn't really come out in America yet. It wasn't really a big deal just yet. Mm-hmm. She wanted to take the precautionary measure of pulling them. And so then I went back to the sign company, and I asked one of our employees, I'm like, well, what bottle do you use? And she goes, oh, this other one's called SIG. You're going to love it. It's just awesome. It's made out of aluminum. It's just the bomb. I'm like, okay, cool. So I got a SIG, and I dropped it, and I looked inside, and it was dented.
Aluminum, right? It
was aluminum. So like, how easy is it to dent a aluminum can? Come on. And I paid like $25 for it. It wasn't cheap. Even in 2009, that was a lot of money for a water bottle. Or
right.
That was probably 2007. It was a ton of money. So and I looked inside, and the gold inside had flaked off, and I didn't know exactly when it flaked off or where that flake off went. And so I called the company. I was like, hey, I lived in Australia, backing up. I lived in Australia, and I read this article about people who keep birds in their kitchens, which yuck. But anyway, the birds would fall dead because they would use this, I guess it turned out it was probably Teflon that was killing the birds. So I had this instant flashback to, holy cow, what did I just ingest? Am I going to be one of these dead canaries? So I call up the
So, the Teflon that they used to probably put the water to feed the birds would
Well,
you know.
the way I took the article, I think it was like, I don't know what magazine it was, but or newspaper, but it's like the cooking, like people cooking in their kitchen and then like rubbing on the pots and pans. So it was the off gassing of the pots and pans from this chemical on this metal. And so I just had this instant, oh heck, what, like what's going to happen to me now? So I find the number, I call them up, I told them what had happened. And they're like, we don't have to tell you. I'm like, well, you kind of, I mean, like I'm asking you because I'm concerned and I'm curious. They're like, no, we don't have to tell you what's in there. That's a proprietary formula. We've got a patent on it. Screw you. I was like, well, hold on now. I'm a customer. I just potentially ingested some of your product. I want to know if I'm safe. And they basically hung up on me. And at that point I was like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong, man. Like, oh, it's legit now. Like, here we go. And I called my brother and he just started working at REI here in Bend. They just opened up and he said, oh, you got to get this metal water bottle. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I go and I get this metal water bottle, this single wall, take a drink and it just spills like all over my shirt. It was not ergonomically correct. It was just dumb. I was like, okay, I guess it's time. I really do have to fill up that shelf. Like I have to create a water bottle for myself. And I guess that one store at least would buy them. And so that's kind of how it like really start. Like that's what made me start it. Yeah.
The jump start of the idea. And were you kind of going in like, once you realized that, were you kind of trying different types of products to see if like one of them will be satisfactory, and then you kind of tried these different products that were, definitely didn't work out that well, the aluminum thing or this thing that was not ergonomically. So you kind of did, that was kind of a little bit of research just to figure out if there is a market fit and stuff like that, right?
Yep, totally. Yeah, like that was the extent of my market research because that's all that there really was at the time. And so after trying both of them, I was like, I'm not happy. I don't know that I could do better, but I know I can at least try.
Right. So how do you go from the stage, the initial stage of every business, which is I have an idea, to the first stage of like, I'd say building a product, or at least like a sample of a product, of the first Hydro Flask?
Well, at the sign company, we had a client who it was a pretty cool guy. And he used to take field trips basically for entrepreneurs over to China to the Canton Fair. And they've changed the name now. I can't remember what it is now, but it was the Canton Fair. And basically all of the who's who factories would come together twice a year in this one area, and they would set up booth and they would show you what a badass factory they were. And I always found that really fascinating. I was like, wow, I could go to this magical land and find factories that could just make anything under the sun. Like everything is made from these factories at the Canton Fair. And so I asked him, I was like, hey man, can I come with you to the next like field trip to the Canton Fair? And he's like, no, because nobody does that. There's no water bottle factories. Nobody's really making stainless steel water bottles. I said, well, I wanted it double wall vacuum insulated because my grandpa had a thermos that was glass on the inside and metal on the outside. It was heavy and it stunk and it was just it just wasn't cool. So I thought, well, why can't we just take the glass and turn it into metal and do the same sort of thing and just make it like cool? And he's like, yeah, no, nobody does that. You can't come with. I was like, dang. All right. Well, so I just took it upon myself to buy a plane ticket to China, and Shanghai was the cheapest ticket, airport. And so I took off to Shanghai, and I happened to find a water bottle company, but they turned out to be plastic. And I was like, well, I came all the way from Hawaii to come and open up, to start this brand. And they're like, well, we just do plastic. I'm like, well, I need to do metal. Where do I do metal? They're like, we have no idea. There's not really anybody doing that. So I start to leave. I was like, dang, that kind of sucks. And this guy came up and he kind of like grabs my arm and he's like, hey man, I got a cousin down in Hangzhou who is like a how would you call it? Like a trading agent, basically. And he helps people find factories. You should go, talk to him. I'm like, okay, well, how do I get down there? So he like scratches out on the paper how to get to the train station and then like where I need to go. And so I take my piece of paper with me and I go to the train station and I get on the train. About 4 hours later, I get to Hangzhou and there's like 20 million people at this train station. And I realized like, oh man, I don't know what's going on now. Luckily, being white, I was one of only 0 other white people. And like sure enough, the guy's cousin's wife came up and met me and they took me to some factories, and all the factories for the first day said no. And then the second day we found another factory who said, yeah, sure, we'd be willing to try that. Mm-hmm. The second day they liked the idea enough to give it a shot. And that's kind of how that started.
Nice. And did you already have in mind what type of quantity you wanted to order? Did you, have, some potential customers and stuff like that? Or did you just go there and see like, okay, I just need some type of a prototype and then I'll figure out how to sell it?
Yeah, the latter. I had no idea how many, I had no idea what MOQ meant, minimum order quantity. I didn't know how much it was going to cost. I didn't know. I just knew things were cheaper in China. But I had no idea what that meant. And, but I did know that, I needed a couple prototypes just to kind of, and I always felt like at the end of the day, even if I just end up with like a case of these water bottles, it might be pretty cool just to have these water bottles just for myself.
Right.
So like no harm, no foul, just getting some. And then they told us the minimum MOQ, minimum order quantity was 3,000. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's, how much is that? Well, back then, and even nowadays, they're $5 a bottle. And so went back and I told my girlfriend at the time, and she's like, well, we don't have anything else going on right now. And so we just sold the sign company and we sold everything in our house and everything we owned, and ended up moving in with my mom back home, moved back to Oregon, back to Bend, and ordered the first 1,500. We actually ran out of money from placing the order of 3,000 and then actually paying for it. We ran out of money. And so we had to only order 1,500, and we got those in, and like, it just took off.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting story. It's it takes, I guess, guts, and I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs that come up with a great idea, like you said, I just needed some bottles. Usually it comes like you identify like a need that you need something, like, oh, it would be great to have that. And guess what? You're not the only person that feels like that. And, you can sell to everybody else and you can use it yourself, which is great.
I always thought it'd just be an added bonus if anybody ever bought any, and I thought, well, even if we did 3,000, I bet I could at least, sell them for $12 and make, double my money and end up with really cool water bottles for the next, however many years it takes me to go through them. So I kind of saw it as a win-win no matter what. But then, as it started to grow, I realized like, oh, we could actually make a real impact in the oceans and the plastic. And like, we could actually, this could be a legitimate, serious thing. That just is, that was just when it really became a lot of fun, and it just really started taking off.
Right. Cause it's a first like reusable bottle where I can take my bottle and I can take it with me. Right. I think even now, like, give me a sec. Like right here, I have some type of some type of a derivative of that idea. I think, like this, this like coffee mug cup that's metal inside, so you can reuse it. So that's like
double wall vacuum insulated.
Yeah. You know, they should thank you for the idea, but it's just yeah, that's a great thing. So how does it go from, you know, okay, we ran out of money to like, okay, now we're selling these bottles. Do you need to go raise money? How does it work in the initial stage of the business development, I guess?
Yeah, initially we just were like figuring we could just bootstrap everything and we would be fine. And, you know, it makes sense that if we, you know, I mean, we were paying $5, $5.50. If we sold them for 20, we should have plenty of money to, you know, retire soon. Right. But reality kicked in and it was like, okay, well, we were growing so fast that we needed to basically pay for the bottles. And then it would take 30 days. We'd have to pay for the full order. It'd take 30 days to produce them, 30 days to cross the pond, another 2 weeks to 30 days to kind of get in, get processed, get shipped out to, you know, eventually we were getting into stores and different locations around the country. So, I mean, we're looking at anywhere from 90 to 120 days. And then after they reach the store, most stores, most of the big brands at least, want a net 30. So we were looking at 120 days between the time we had to pay to the time we actually got any money from them.
Right. And then if somebody cancels, you're like, oh, God damn, I just ordered so many bottles and this guy canceled on me.
For real. Yeah. 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 There was a lot of that. I mean, there was a lot of, you know, like people would place a fairly, you know, for us, a pretty substantial order was like 72 bottles. And then they get cold feet and they only order 12. It's like, okay, well, what do we do with the rest? You know, and at first we started out just at it's called the Portland Saturday Market up in Portland, Oregon. It's basically an outdoor street market fair, people just hawking their homemade goods. And then there was us that we're not homemade. And we were going pretty well with that. And then we found a sales rep and I didn't even know what a sales rep was. I was like, I had no idea. He had to explain it to me. And he got us into the first couple real good sporting goods stores. And that's when it really started to take off because people would go in and they'd buy one, they'd take it home, they'd try it, it'd keep hot and cold. And that was just the start. They started to hydrate, which the kind of the first time people had water with them portably on a daily basis. Yeah. I mean, it didn't really, I mean, I remember we had like big Coca-Cola, you know, Pepsi and Coke and, you know, sugar water, like big containers like that. But that was like the only time you'd ever see anybody with liquid. Like you'd see these, can I say, big fat secretaries sitting there drinking their big gulps, you know, and you never really saw anybody drinking water. And, you know, of course, people had coffee mugs and stuff like that. But when people were getting hydrated, they would physically feel better and they could associate it to the water bottle. And they'd go back and they'd buy the rest of their family some. They'd buy them as gifts. They'd buy more for themselves. And boom, it just took off like wildfire.
Right. Yeah. It's weird how like in a way you also, I'm not sure if you change the behavior, but that's definitely, I think, like you see these days, especially in the United States, you see these urban nomads, you know, like that they're going to work and everybody has a type of a Hydro Flask with them, you know, having a coffee or carrying like a water and just refilling it, drinking it. And at the same time, you know, you're not just dropping like 5 plastic bottles and stuff like that.
For real.
So with a sales rep, for example, there's a basic question for anybody who's maybe an entrepreneur and listening, like, how do you compensate them? You know, like you're a startup, you don't have any money with you. How do you compensate the sales rep in the beginning?
It was strictly you kill it, you eat it. You don't kill it, you don't eat
commission,
it,
right?
You know? It was straight commission.
Right.
And you know, he the first one, he kind of, you know, kind of rightfully so, kind of took advantage of us, but also really helped us out tremendously. So he earned it. And, you know, he had I don't know, a number, say 6 other brands that he was already working with. And they were, well-known, reputable brands. And so he kind of would, sort of show us his contracts with the other companies, and we'd kind of take them and kind of edit and copy and paste and edit and move this and that. And that's how we came up with the first contracts. And he told us about Outdoor Retail Show, which at the time was over in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it was like a stretch. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was a lot of money for us to get over there. And so we had this like real gangster homemade bamboo 10 by 10 booth that we made. And we showed up, and what happened was when the bamboo would get dry under the hot lights, it would crack and it would echo. So it sounded like gunshots. And so at first everybody would like duck because, shit, somebody's shooting at us. And then after they realized it wasn't gunshots, the police aren't running. Like at first the security, kind of pounced. And then after they realized like, that's just a stupid booth. But then people came towards the gunshot sounds because they thought somebody was shooting in the hall. Like, how can you shoot inside? Let's go check it out. Oh, it's a water bottle. What the hell? And so we got like a lot of publicity at that very first show, just because people are wondering who the hell is shooting guns inside. And from there, we started picking up sales reps all across the country. And like the sales reps and we knew like we were on to something big. Like this was the first of quite a few to come. And so, I mean, we just opened up every door, every market, everything we could. We just opened up as fast as we could and just grew as quick as possible.
Right. And so which year is that in chronologically, more or less?
That was 2009.
So 2007, you come up with the idea, you realize that there's demand. By 2009, you hit that big publicity with, your bamboo stand shooting people inside, but actually not really doing it. And then you start growing quickly. I assume probably like your sales rep, when they realize that, this is a product that can be sold easily, that they will really want to sign up with you, because guess what? I get commission. And at that point, I assume you start growing and you start hiring people, right? Is that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. We went from, so it's just my partner and I, and every time it would get rough, she would just leave. She just bounce in the middle of the night, or, like, oh, I'm going to go to the grocery store. And she just bounce and take off back to Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And so it was me by myself a lot of the time, which I was fine with. But then as soon as it came to like, man, I got to do the books and I got to do graphic design and I got like, I got to do customer service, and like, there's a lot of shit to do. So I took on I just back then I got onto Craigslist and found somebody to help. And so she came with me down to the Outdoor Retail Show. And I think my partner actually came back. I can't remember if she came back for the first one or not. After it started growing, it became pretty evident that like we needed as much help as possible. So, and then she'd leave. Yeah. So I'd bring over my family, like my family would come over from the Valley, which is about 2.5, 3 hours away, and they'd help, and we'd put hang tags on, and it took on a 10,000 square foot world headquarter lease, which was terrifying, but we needed a place just to store the bottles and to work on them and ship them out. And, before I knew it, we had, I don't know. I always like to keep it real small, but I think we had probably, 15, 20 employees in-house.
And was that mostly financed by like just your revenue and profit margins, or did you start raising money at some point?
No, we had to raise capital pretty quickly. We went through friends and family round, of course. Mm-hmm. Well, first we sold everything we had. And then after that, after we self-financed it, then we did friends and family. Then we exhausted that pretty quickly. We went from 3,000 to 10,000, 20,000, and then 40,000 pretty much month after month after month. So we were up to 40,000 bottles a month. At $5, $5.50 a bottle, it adds up pretty quick. And then we were up to 80,000 bottles a month. So it was going out pretty quick. We found a local banker guy who had always wanted to invest with us, and he was kind of a fan of Hydro Flask, and he just wanted to play in our sandbox. So he helped us out with the first couple big orders. And then we got to the point where we had about $1 million that we owed. And it sucked because we'd already taken on investors, and we'd already taken on, or not investors, excuse me. We already had like, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 employees at the time. We had this lease on this big building. And one day I was like, okay, like, I'm done. I can't make it till Friday. And so I start writing up the, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to let you go letter to fire everybody on Friday. And this guy came in on a Wednesday, and he says, hey, I want to talk to Travis, and I want to work here. And it's like, no, I'm not hiring. I'm not hiring. I'm not hiring. And he's real persistent. And then finally he goes like, well, why will you not hire me? Like, just tell me the truth. What's up? Is it me personally? And I said, no, like, honestly, we have no more money. I can't afford to hire you. I'm closing down the business on Friday. And he goes, well, what do you need? And I said, well, I need 80,000 bottles. He goes, yeah, but how much money? I said, $1 million. I just kind of threw the number out. And he goes, oh, okay. So if I got you $1 million by Friday, could I start on Monday? And this was Wednesday afternoon at like 4:30. And I was just like, yeah, sure, dude. Like, let's go with that. Let's say that's going to happen. He goes, okay, cool. And he leaves. And I completely forgot about it. I just kind of wrote him off as, just a local crazy guy. And sure enough, Friday morning, I got my letter ready, and I'm ready to call everybody into the office and just say, hey, look, I got to let you go. I'm sorry. And this other guy comes in, and he's like, hey, I'm here to see Travis. I'm like, God, geez, like some debt collector, or, who is this guy? And he says, this other guy told me that, you're potentially looking for some capital. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like this is like a scam or a joke, or what, like, is there a camera hidden somewhere? Like, what's going on? And he asked, he's like, what do you need? I said, all right, I need $1 million. And he sat down, he took out his checkbook, and he wrote a check for $1 million. And I kind of looked at it and was like, all right, I'll go to the bank. And if it clears, like, good doing business with you. Sure enough, it cleared, and we were back in business. And so he financed us for quite some time. And then he ended up buying me out later on down the road. He bought her out, and then he ended up buying me out.
Oh, wow. That's, that was the biggest, did he ask for a board seat for the money that he gave? That's a gutsy move. He probably believed a lot in the product and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't recall a lot of the paperwork, because it was one of those things that, like, foolishly or not, like, I didn't ask a lot of questions. It was like, I knew that he wasn't going to break my legs type of person,
Right.
like, he didn't seem like that type of guy. Like, he wasn't going to take me out back and shoot me if I didn't pay him. So other than, like, just short of that, like, I was ready to sign whatever.
And how stressful is that? Like, a lot of people, I think, like in today's culture, we celebrate CEOs and whatnot. And, people think, like, oh, to be Jeff Bezos or whatever successful, to be Travis is just, oh, he invented this, boom, like this. He, became, rich, successful and whatnot. But how stressful is to be in the position when you're like, I don't know if these 5 people that work for me, if I can support these people anymore. Some of them have kids. It might be, like, how could you describe that moment, like, before this $1 million comes in?
It was always the hardest part of being an entrepreneur for me. I mean, I remember having the fence company, and we had 25 employees, and I knew their families. Like, they would make me food,
Right.
like, they would show up with their microwaves at the job site, and they'd cook us burritos and chimichangas, and, like, we'd fiesta with them. And I knew these people, and the strain and the stress of not being able to support and feed, these families, these employees and their families, was always just, it was so much stress. I mean, like, for me, that was always the hardest part of having a business, was having employees, and the stress of not only their like that person, but that person's persons, their
Right.
family. That was always so stressful. So yeah, when the $1 million came in, it was a big sigh of relief, but at the same time, it was also kind of like, oh shit, like we're going to only take off from here and it's only going to get more stressful because we already knew we needed like 5 more employees at least. And we probably needed to replace 3 or 4 of the other employees at least. And so it was kind of a bittersweet thing where it's like, okay, like we've hit the big time, but at the same time, you gotta pay the price. And there are a lot of ramifications that I had no idea that would come with it.
Mm-hmm. So that's, and when the guy comes in, that's where are we at in terms of like time, year?
That was probably 2000. I think 8, 9, 10, maybe about 2000, like real early 2010, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So kind of 3 years in.
Yeah, after go. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
after the initial. Yeah.
Right. And then, from that time to the time of your exit, how does that work? How long did it take you? How was it, the decision to actually exit the company? Is that, I assume that's bittersweet, but a lot of founders, are looking for a successful exit, and there are certain businesses that are just made to be exited. I'm not sure if that was the case in this case, but yeah, I think it would be a great thing for maybe some founders that are listening.
Well, I had no mentors. I had a horrible attorney. His name's Carl. He's in Salem, Oregon. So if you live in Salem and you've got an attorney named Carl, bounce, get out of there.
Yeah.
I didn't say his last name, so there's no slander suit there.
Right.
And it was really, really difficult because I only wanted the best for the company. I wanted the best for the bottles. I wanted the best for the customers. I wanted more people to be drinking out of these bottles, not to make money for myself or make money for the company, but so that they would feel better. Like I wanted to hydrate the planet, and I wanted to eradicate plastic from the oceans and the landfills. And so I wanted the largest company in the world only because I wanted to do the most good in the world. And, fortunately or unfortunately, I didn't have the best advisors. I didn't have the best attorney. I didn't have any mentors to kind of help me. And so after running at like a 24/7 pace for so many years, I kind of accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish. It was kind of like when I was a pilot and I was like, okay, there were, I don't know how many, but like, let's just say 28 airplanes that I wanted to fly. Well, I flew 26 of them. So I could feel pretty happy that I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish as a pilot. Same thing with Hydro Flask. It was like, I've got an international brand. We've got bottles selling all over the world, all over the country, especially, but we've got an international brand. We're doing big things, and I've got my water bottles. I mean, like I got everything I set out to do. And I had a lot of debt from loans, from student loans, from aviation. And then also from starting Hydro Flask, I had a lot of debt. I had a lot of credit card debt. And again, not having a great advisor and not having a great attorney. All of my partners' debts were taken care of through the company. Mine were not. So I had a lot of family and friends that the company owed money to that I personally somehow got left holding the ticket for.
Right.
So like, and then also I was over in Paris. I think I was at the Louvre or one of the big museums. And I'd heard this story about Sam Adams, and the guy who founded Sam Adams said that as soon as he saw a bottle cap, like outside of your neck of the woods, outside of Mass, then he would know that he made it. Like he knew he was good and he was done. So when I saw a Hydro Flask at the Louvre, I was like, okay, yeah, I think I've actually accomplished everything I've set out to accomplish. So I actually got back from that trip to Paris, and I sold out within a few weeks. Well, yeah, few weeks, a month or so.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That I think what you said is extremely important. I think for anybody who's founding a company, to have good advisors, somebody who's maybe older than you, had experience in the industry to guide you, somebody you can trust, maybe an attorney that can advise you in like how to structure the money that you put into the company so you can pay yourself back, so you don't have problems with like paying debt back and stuff like that. I see that in my neck of the woods all the time. It's super important. And yeah, and one of the things is not only did you produce the great brand that you found lure, it's like there's a movement. This is now an industry. You create an industry from nothing. Like, there were just plastic bottles, and now there's a whole industry for this. And I have some kind of a knockoff right here in front of me on the table, which is, it's fantastic. Yeah, and
I love that they're knockoffs. I mean, and I always like the very first knockoff was one of our screen printer actually stole one of the bottles. He cut it open, reverse engineered it, sent it off to China, had it made, and he did like basically a one-to-one knockoff.
Right.
Well, that's what patents are for. We quickly took him out of the water, and of course he bounced back and he came up with a different design and a different brand, and he's still in the market today. So that first competitor was like, oh dang. But then after they started coming faster and faster, and I realized like, nah, we're the industry leader. We're good here. I also realized like how much plastic we are preventing. Think about how much all of us are preventing. Like, this is awesome. So right. It's kind of hard to be, it was definitely bittersweet, but again, I wasn't doing it for money. And so it wasn't like, oh man, those people just stole $10 from my pocket. No, it was like, oh, that's awesome. They just saved, 1,500 plastic water bottles from the ocean.
Right. It's like, it will be like Elon Musk complaining that, like BMW is turning into electrical cars. Yeah. But if your mission and vision is to have a clean planet, or for you, the same thing, having a clean planet, if everybody is doing it, you win still. Like, it might not, like, might make all the profits, but you change the behavior of everybody, and your vision and mission, which is, to make the planet clean and to have, water, portable water and stuff like that, you achieved it. So that's very impressive.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. Yeah.
Nice. So with regards to so currently you're working, I think, as a, I assume you have great amount of experience, not only for founding the company and through all that process of going, from founding to exit, but you probably have a lot of experience with, suppliers and dealing with, producers of materials and stuff like that. So is that where Tumalo Group comes in? Is that what you're currently doing?
Yeah. Yep. You're spot on. I just kind of, I love talking to people and meet new people, and the people I get along well with, we seem to do good business together. And I've been friends with a lot of suppliers and a lot of factories for multiple decades. Which that's kind of like, gosh, can we edit that out? I'm not that old. I'm only 43. But I've been friends with these guys for quite some time, and we're opening up Mexico a lot more for manufacturing, a little bit in Europe, which is fun. The United States, man, we were on a really good trajectory, and then we switched administrations, and now we're back to China again. And, for better or worse, it's a bit bittersweet, but there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good stuff in China. And there's a lot of bad people, and there's a lot of good, a lot of ways to get knocked off, and there's a lot of danger to it. And that's kind of Tumalo Group. That's kind of our sweet spot. Like, we know good people that do good things, and we know the reputable factories, because not everybody's bad. Like, that's like, that's just not true. I was going to say, like, not all Americans are fat, and not all Chinese people are knocking you off. It's just not, it's a lot of Americans are obese, but not all of us. Well, a lot of the, shall we say, Alibaba factories are going to knock you off, but we work with the creme de la creme.
Right, the good people, and you know how to secure a good deal. And so, do you usually work with what stage of companies do you work with? I know at least one company that I can talk to you afterwards that I would definitely recommend to you. But what kind of stage of a company you work with when it comes to providing consulting services and stuff like that?
All stages. Yeah, I'd totally appreciate the chat. Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that. Um, you know, startups, as long as they're funded, I have some kind of ballpark numbers that I usually throw out. Like starting a brand, starting a company with products is about $100,000. And so the Tumalo Group, we don't offer any financing. We do have some people you can talk to, but I kind of prefer people be financed and funded prior to coming over. And but we work with startups and we work with Fortune whatever number companies also that are looking to right now what we're doing is we're working with a lot of companies that are looking to switch countries. So they've got a brand and they're well established and they need help moving back home, or they're to Mexico or Canada or wherever they're looking to move to. And yeah. And then I also work with just private individuals. I work with CEOs and founders, and I work with on an advisory level with anybody really who's an entrepreneur or doing business. I also work with, like, not so much right now specifically, but I've worked with some celebrities. When I was back as a pilot, I used to do business advising for different Caribbean countries. So yeah, pretty much anybody and everybody,
Yeah, that's cool. That's did you see a trend? This is like complete. Did you see a trend of like people wanting to move from China whenever this tensions and the virus and everything happened? Is also maybe the supply chain difficulties that are making people come closer to home, because like I don't want to worry about this boat from China getting stuck in one of the channels and not going through. And is that some trend that you saw?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride over the past couple of years. And I think that I know, I shouldn't say think, I know that there's so much going on behind the scenes that especially the mainstream media, it's almost like they try to take us off on a completely different, it's like, look over here. But most people don't actually have any idea what's actually going on. I have a lot of people ask me about that, like, especially now, like, how do I know my container's not going to get stuck offshore? If you don't have missiles in it, if you don't have humans in it, if you don't have expired vaccinations or can I even say that word? If you don't have expired drugs in your container, you should be able to get through customs and border fine. But if you have anything nefarious in your containers and you just so happen to have, because there's a couple different ways to ship. You can have a full container full, or you can have less than container full. If you have less than container full, and you have other people's goods in there, sometimes it can be tricky. And so that's another reason why the Tumalo Group is like, we're staying so busy, because we know what are in our containers, and so our containers are getting through because it's not nefarious, it's legit. And so to answer your question, yes, I did see, especially with the last administration, a lot of people were looking to leave other countries and come back home. That all changed. What was it? This is January we're in. So last January, we're at what, 1 year and 5 days ago, that all changed. So now we deal with it and we do the best we can, and we work with the best of the factories, and we do business as usual until we get pointed in a different direction. Hopefully that'll come a lot sooner than we all anticipate. But until that happens, until a few more things take place and transpire, we are doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's an interesting, I guess, observation. I think we've done so far, I think almost an hour. And I think we can slowly close out the podcast. This was a pleasure. Definitely super interesting to learn about your experience and then see what you're doing now. One thing I would maybe ask to close out, just given your experience, if somebody is a founder out there, an entrepreneur, what would be, some of the words words of advice that you would give them in their process? Have a good attorney. Don't hire Carl.
Avoid Carl at all cost. But seriously, have a good attorney. good attorneys are expensive, but you save money with the good ones. The cheap ones, you're going to end up paying more, and you can learn. I mean, you can lose way more with the cheap ones. And so it is better. Like, you can scrimp and save on a lot of things, but probably should not scrimp and save with your attorney. And make sure you have one that's really on your side and really knows what's going on. I also would like to say that, like, I believe that we're in for a very big change coming very, 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 very soon. And we're going to need entrepreneurs. We're going to need people who step up and they're able to, take charge of businesses. I think that corporations are going to start to change. We're going to start to see changes from the top down in a lot of these big corporations, and we're going to need people to pull the slack. And those people are called entrepreneurs that start businesses. And I really hope it's coming. I feel it's coming from all that I hear on the, on the back channels. It's on its way sooner than later. And also, I'd like to say it's going to be okay. Like, we're going to be good. Like, we're going to hopefully, more than likely probably be better off tomorrow than we were today. And at least we can strive for that.
Right. And what kind of changes we're referring to? I have to ask.
I think we're going to see some pretty interesting things happen with our politicians. I think we're going to see a lot of interesting things happen with our celebrities. I think we're going to start hearing more and more about where all of the CEOs have been disappearing to, and why they're no longer. Why are the CEOs disappearing? Why are they stepping down and resigning in bulk, in mass? Why is that happening? And mainstream media is not talking about that. I think we're going to start finding that out. And I think that's going to open up a lot more questions. And there's a lot of Pandora's boxes that are going to be taking place over the next, month or so. And I truly do believe that we're going to be okay, and that this is the greatest nation, and we're going to stand back up, and we're going to get back up on our feet. And yeah, I do believe that.
Interesting. All right. So where can people find you? Where is the plug? Where can people see you, find you these days? Website or anything like that?
The Tumalo group, the website's not stellar, but it's mainly word of mouth, so I don't put a lot of resources towards it. TUMALOGROUP.com, Travis at tumalogroup.com, info at tumalogroup.com. Also, I'm on LinkedIn. I kind of check that every once in a while, and I've got a partner who he helps kind of check and run all that stuff. Travis, ROSBACH on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Well, it was a definite pleasure to have you on. This was a very interesting conversation, and hope to have you on again at some point.
Vladimir, I had a lot of fun. I was a little nervous because you have so many highly intelligent people, talking about such interesting topics. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, then you perfectly fit in.
Oh, come on.
No need to be worried.
And then there was Travis. Oh,
all right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.